Welcome to Sustainable Industry, the podcast dedicated to empowering business leaders drive net zero innovation. Each episode, we're joined by a business leader or pioneer who's going to be sharing practical tools on ways to drive net zero. Today, we're talking innovation ecosystems and ways to leverage the resources here in the UK. And I'm delighted to host Andrew Bell, the Sustainability Team Lead at the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, as our special guest today. Thank you for joining us, Andy. If we could get a little bit intro from you in terms of what the AMRC does, who you do it for, and how it aligns with the UK's broader sustainability goals.
Thanks, Nick. So AMRC is really an intermediary between academia and industry, designed to pull through low-level innovation into meaningful impact for large manufacturing organisations primarily. We're focused around the High Value Manufacturing Centre, and we are one of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult. And as part of that, we've really got kind of a focus around things like aerospace, nuclear power, ships, rail, anything that's big and expensive. That's what we. Our role traditionally has been around productivity, but shifting more recently towards trying to address that sustainability question. Who we do it for? Well, it's for anyone and everybody that's kind of a manufacturing organisation, and we fully align with the UK's broad sustainability goals because fundamentally we're a technology organisation. And it's our role to figure out the difficult answers to the difficult questions that we have around decarbonising heavy industry, high-value manufacturing and other sectors.
Brilliant. And I'd be lucky enough to come and see all the work that you do at the AMRC, but for those that haven't been able to, can you just give us some examples of what that looks like in terms of the way that you collaborate with these industrial partners and what the outcome might be?
I think the best way of thinking about it is we are really a kind of an offline sandpit for people to come and explore those things that you cannot break into production to kind of explore. So we have a number of facilities boasting kind of state-of-the-art, off-the-shelf equipment, which is really critical for what we do. And we then engineer solutions within a realistic factory setting that can be translated directly into industry as and when they are required, really.
And can you unpack some of the specialities that you have at your disposal there? You've spoken about some of the technologies that you have. Can you just drill down and explain in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, sure. So we really cover the whole of the manufacturing sector, so all those technologies that you would consider to be manufacturing, right through from design through to manufacturing, whether that be additive or subtractive metallics, into the composite materials, right through to manufacturing intelligence and digitization of the manufacturing process, automation and complex assembly, and we include things like castings and other technologies as well within that mix. The best way to think of it really is that we can replicate a complete supply chain for a high-value manufacturing organisation, start to finish.
Brilliant. And there's lots of conversations at the moment that I'm having with manufacturers around sustainability and what it means for their operations and their finances. And something that's coming out in a lot of the conversations is that these companies are making steps in the right direction, but ultimately sustainability is going to cost more. And how do we overcome some of the frictions between returning to sort of pre-COVID levels of productivity and market share versus the imperative to transform our businesses in line with what we know is a pressing priority for the sector?
Okay, so what we're generally finding is that sustainability and profitability go hand in hand. I think that's the first and the most important thing to say. There are hundreds now of examples where organisations that put sustainability first and profit as a result, Unilever probably being front and centre in that. And really, it's about encouraging people to understand that it's small steps, understand that it's about reinvesting the benefit of those small steps, and ultimately achieving, a meaningful reduction in emissions or whatever aspect of sustainability you're looking at.
Yeah, and I suppose it's challenging for an FD of a particularly maybe a smaller company that might be having pressure applied from it further up the value chain. What role does the AMRC play in alleviating some of those pressures for those more susceptible companies?
Yeah, I think it's twofold really. So one is an educational piece. So we can show you how to figure out what to turn off and when, which sounds like a really simple problem, but actually it's not. So there's that kind of educational piece. The second aspect is that we can kind of figure it out in isolation and then implement it on a site. So we're not having to stop production to be able to kind of make the necessary changes.
And what's exciting you? I sort of touched on a couple of potential barriers there and cultural issues around the way that we approach sustainability. But what's exciting for you as someone that's at the coalface of this every day?
Yeah, everything. I mean, this is such a fast moving kind of area. What we're seeing is that value proposition, business model, manufacturing technology, product design, human behavior, they're all changing kind of simultaneously to address this problem. And just going back to the kind of comment about the financial direction, this is very much about understanding that sustainability is more than cost. It is really a value proposition. So you are suggesting that a more sustainable product has higher value because it kind of ticks a variety of additional boxes that are quite often beneficial to a business. For example, a shift in materials can from a material that requires a coating to one that doesn't, can fundamentally alter that whole value proposition, so that you kind of you don't need to do multiple separate operations, or you are able to kind of have a lifetime without repair. So it's just having that different viewpoint on it, really.
And I suppose some of the areas that you outlined there around business model proposition, the business model transformation, and your value proposition and your technology capabilities and so on, they all sound like they're big, heavy, chunky bits of your business. What does it look like in sort of granular steps for a company that might approach the AMRC to say that we want to address our supply chain, our warehousing, for example?
Yeah, I think that's a really solid question. I think that kind of the first response to that is it's very much the AMRC's role to support a business and make that transition. That's what we're all about. And I think you have to. I think people think people believe that these are huge changes, and quite often they are multiple small changes, which can be more palatable. But unless they understand what that dynamic looks like, I think it can be quite, it can look too big to deal with. So I think part of what we do is very much about that kind of, breaking it down so that we can understand and take small steps. You're not changing what you manufacture necessarily when you change your business model. You are changing fundamentally how you supply that. So it's a complex question, but I think it's completely achievable.
Mm. And what about those companies that have got sort of extended supply chains and they can understand how they might influence what happens within their four walls, but they very challenging where you're looking at upstream, downstream partners. How do you address some of those sort of extended questions?
Yeah, so we've got a long history of working with business and with their supply chain as well. So we would typically engage with an OEM and then work with their supply chain as part of an agreed program of work, really. So it then becomes a series of small projects in a program rather than it trying to boil the ocean with one huge kind of sustainability driven project. And a lot of businesses are asking this supply chain question. And another huge part of this is kind of sits with the work we do in the digital space, in the Industry 4.0 space. So we are looking at ways to digitally passport products. So you'd be able to record carbon and carry the carbon value with a part right through its life cycle. And that's kind of one of the critical enabling technologies to kind of understanding this supply chain work. Where is the carbon? That's really fundamentally a digital question. It's it can be measured. It's but you've got to capture that information and lock it to the product and make sure that's then carried through all the stages of the supply chain, right through to the OEM and ultimately out into the real world and end of life.
So building on that digital piece, and obviously Industry 4 and smart operations have been a conversation that's been around for some time, and companies have made great strides in those areas. Those projects, they can easily be piggybacked by the sustainability agenda, can't they? We've spoken about agility in supply chains, and that's sort of another byword for traceability now. So where do you see the biggest breakthroughs in terms of novel applications of existing technologies to help drive net zero?
For me, there's a really fundamental problem of we overcomplicate kind of the measurement of things when we're talking about sustainability. And what we're trying to do is to use the intelligence of sensors and data gathering devices and the machines themselves, so that we're able to do things like monitor a process or a whole cell, for example, from a single point, so that we're not having to put multiple sensors into that environment. We can do as much as, if not more than is necessary, with the minimum number of devices, and that's going to be really important for SMEs and the smaller businesses that we engage with, because it's very quickly going to be prohibitive to put a temperature, a power, a noise, a vibration sensor onto every piece of equipment that you have as an SME. What if we can do that with a relatively rudimentary device and a little bit of intelligence in the mix to understand what that device is kind of outputting.
And you mentioned you picked up some work that you're doing there with some SMEs. Do you think that there are some, or do you, loaded question, who do you think is most able to leverage the innovations that we're seeing at the moment? Because traditionally we've seen the larger companies with the bigger R&D spends being able to move quickly. Do you think that this drive for net zero will be more favorable for the smaller agile companies?
When you're making any change, agility is always enormously helpful. And smaller companies have that advantage of being more agile, really. I think that what the digital agenda particularly does is it democratizes that ability to understand your emissions or whatever sustainability metric that is desirable, whether that's waste or whatever that is. And by doing that, I'm really kind of focusing on simplifying the technology. We can move forward as a whole without having to kind of say, only a big company can do this. It's going to be prohibitively expensive. If we can get a system down to a few £100, and it's going to save you, 3, 4, 5, even 10 times that within the first year, why would you not? And that's really where I feel we need to be. We need to making that cost benefit clear to businesses as well. I mean, ultimately, saving energy is saving money, right?
And I suppose building on that cost benefit piece, do you think the sort of traditional ROI calculations that you would have seen on, as we discussed earlier, Industry 4 technology is the same with sustainable, or do you think that sort of money that we're pumping into net zero needs to be looked at with a sort of a longer horizon?
It's a difficult question. It depends. It's the kind of the short answer. The slightly longer answer is there are things that you can do fundamentally very, very quickly. So you can switch off the lights, the printer, the machine, where you're not using them. Dead straightforward. We've run a protocol at AMRC and found that, just by figuring out what we can switch off, and there's no digital involved in this, it's just kind of people scratching heads and saying we can or we can't turn that off overnight, over the weekend. We make a significant saving. So it's you've got that kind of like short-term, immediate kind of, we can do that straight away. There's no reason why not. Some other aspects of sustainability and even net zero in its own right are more abstract and take more thought and take more investment per se. But I think the idea is very much that, you save X amount by doing the switch off protocol, which you can figure out with a pencil and paper. You then invest that in your digital solution. Your digital solution ups the ante again, and it says, well, actually, are you aware that this fan's running continually? That's doing X, that's doing Y. And then you reinvest again, and at that point you're reinvesting in putting solar panels on the roof of your building, or buying a wind turbine as part of one of these wind turbine cooperatives that we're seeing coming through now, and so on and so forth. And it builds and builds and builds. So yeah, it's kind of things we could do today, but things that we need to kind of push back until we've got a bit of understanding, a bit of investment, and a bit more confidence through that.
And a final question on how to assess the return on any investment in sustainability. We talk quite a lot when you're talking about sustainability and net zero, talk about systems level thinking and systems approach to things. Does that need to be applied when you're thinking about investment and ROI that traditionally might have been quite narrow in terms of X amount on this machine gives me X percentage increase in productivity, so on?
Yeah, and I think really we're coming back to return on investment having to have a value proposition angle to it now. I'm not sure what it looks like in future, but I do know from the finance sector they are now looking at longer term scenarios for funding sustainable action, and that's because we, to your point, fundamentally, these are not kind of near-term horizon changes. There are things that are happening over the next 25 years in reality. So you've got this kind of you've got this kind of like bare bones return on investment, a number, but there's got to be some other metric in there as well. And what that looks like, it's still, admittedly, still in discussion. There's the finance sector is really leading in this space.
Brilliant. So building on that sort of longer term outlook, what does the next 5-10 years look like for the AMRC in terms of your strategic priorities around net zero?
So I think really for us, we've got a number of strands, but primarily we want to walk the talk. So we want AMRC to be an exemplar of what is possible in terms of sustainable infrastructure, organisation, operations, etc., etc. From the technology side of things, what we really want to be able to do is, as I mentioned before, kind of democratize sustainability monitoring through intelligent use of those digital tools, but also really move into this space where we're able to predict likely outcomes for a given choice that we make in terms of a processing route, a design, a supply chain, so that we are not necessarily getting the perfect answer, but managing the risk to a much higher degree than we're currently able to. And that's very much where I see the AMRC kind of heading over the next few years. It's that kind of combination of digital tools with the ability to make increasingly accurate decisions about sustainability.
And finally, what would you say to leader of a manufacturing engineering business that may not have engaged with the AMRC previously? They've identified a problem, but they don't necessarily know where to start.
Yeah, I think, putting it simply, just reach out. We have a whole team of people that are able to help, and just because you are not a large organisation within the United Kingdom doesn't mean to say that we wouldn't look at a project that you are interested in doing. We have a completely open door policy, and really it's just a case of reaching out, and if we can't help, we'll tell you equally. It's very likely that we can, and we'll try and move you forward.
Brilliant. Well, listen, it goes without saying that all of the links will be in the description for this, of everything you've discussed on there, some outlining some of the competencies that the AMRC and the wider innovation ecosystem have. Feel free to reach out to Andy or the team here at Sustainable Industry. We're always happy to help and steer you in the right direction where we can. Thanks again for joining me, Andy Bell, Sustainability Team Lead at the AMRC. I'm Nicholas Cox. Until next time, see you then.
Cheers, Nick.